Welcome back to the channel. Are you ready to face your darkest fears? Tonight, we're diving into terrifying horror stories. From eerie whispers in the dark to the unsettling truth behind a barren road. Who's really waiting on the barren road? Let's find out, but don't say I didn't warn you. The peaceful paths of the recently constructed community were illuminated by a light glow from the moon, which was high in the sky. Suspense filled the air, as if the earth beneath the buildings were holding its breath. Emily had never given the history of the area she had relocated to with her son Jack any thought. She needed a new beginning, away from the small apartment and memories that stuck in the back of her mind like phantoms. However, as the days went by, something started to seem off. At first, it was only a faint feeling that something was observing, hiding just beyond of her line of sight. She heard it for the first time late one night, like a voice on the wind, faint, nearly inaudible. A murmur. She initially assumed it was the sound of the trees swinging in the wind or the creak of the home settling. But then her name, Emily, was called again, more clearly this time. She felt a chill go down the back of her neck. It was nothing, she'd persuaded herself. The murmurs persisted despite her claims that she was simply worn out and anxious from the move. They increased in volume each night until they filled the house's quiet with a constant, horrifying chorus. Although Emily made an effort to ignore them, her inquisitive and bright-eyed son, Jack, had begun to hear them as well. "Jack," Emily said one evening as she placed a plate of food in front of him, her voice shaking. "Did you not hear them?" The murmurs. With wide eyes and a worry Emily had never seen in him before, Jack nodded. His voice was barely audible as he murmured, "Mom, they're calling my name." From the walls, from the floor, "They want me to come outside." A beat skipped across her heart. This was more than a fleeting fad. There was a terrible problem. The nights that followed were the worst. The murmurs had changed into low or guttural voices that murmured strange phrases in the shadows. Every time Emily closed her eyes, a weight pressed across her chest. She was unable to ignore Jack nightmares when they became so intense that they got worse by screaming in the middle of the night. Emily discovered an ancient book in the attic one extremely stormy evening, as the rain beat against the windows and the wind howled outside. The previous owners had left it behind, its pages brittle and yellowed with age. She was flipping through it when she saw the name, Ancient Burial Grounds. As she read the terrifying description of the ground on which their new home had been constructed, her heart raced. The book claims that the road to the complex was built over an old graveyard where the restless ghosts of the dead were contained, and revengeful behavior had been dormant for decades. There was a reason for the whispers. Emily could hardly breathe as she continued reading after her discovery hit her like an earthquake. According to the book, there is an ancient and dangerous procedure that may lift the curse, but it would cost a terrible price. To please the spirits, a life had to be sacrificed, and Emily knew in her heart that her son Jack was what they desired. The whispers had been calling to him. He had been marked, and if they didn't cease, Jack would be claimed indefinitely. She was terrified. She was unable to lose him. She refused. But he could only be saved by the right. As Emily read the book's last words, her hands began to shake. As the night of the ritual approached, Emily braced herself for the worst. She told Jack everything, her voice breaking as she explained what she had to do. His eyes were full of tears, but he understood. He hugged her tightly, his small hands gripping her as if he could hold her together. The threat of losing him, of leaving him to face the horrors alone, was unbearable. But the terror of the whispers calling his name, the shadows moving around on the walls, and the growing dread in her heart made her realize there was no other option. "I don't want you to go, Mom," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I don't want you to leave me." But Emily knew she had no choice. Only the distant roar of thunder shattered the gloomy silence that greeted the arrival of night. The air was silent and heavy. The wind had stopped. The whispers became louder and more intense as Emily went outside. As though they were alive and observing her every action, the trees appeared to swing in strange ways. The ghost's weight was bearing down on her, and she could feel their piercing, invisible eyes staring at her. The dim light inside revealed Jack's little stature as his face emerged at the window. "Mom," he shouted, his voice stifled by terror. "Please don't go." Before turning into the road, she gave him one more, heartbreaking look. The ground seemed to tremble beneath her feet, vibrating with the sinister energy of the spirits that called it home. The shadows around her wriggled and twisted like living creatures as the temperature dropped. The voices grew louder as she continued down the cursed road, filling her head with an annoying din. She was so consumed by the need to finish the ritual that she was unable to concentrate or think. Beneath her feet, the ancient graveyard appeared to reach upward, its restless ghosts tearing at her soul and drawing her more into its clutches. Then something moved out of the shadows. Something or someone. Emily turned, her eyes scouring the pitch-black darkness, her breath caught in her throat. The twisted creature that arose from the darkness had eyes as dark and empty as a graveyard, and its face was a mask of rotting flesh. It was one of them. The ghosts had come for her. Emily felt a wave of fear as she fled a step, but the ground beneath her feet seemed to shift, drawing her forward. She could feel the terror threatening to overwhelm her, and she had to finish the ritual, or Jack would be lost forever. In a final act of desperation, she recited the words from the book, her voice shaking with fear and determination. The air crackled with energy, and the spirits howled, their cries echoing in the night as the road itself seemed to crack open. The darkness surged around her, and she was swallowed whole. Jack woke up the following morning to silence. The house was abandoned. The whispers had ceased.